Welcome back to One Guy Walks. I'm Stuart Moffat. We're back in the studio. It's been a month. I apologize for that. Every week went by, I was working on material and it's like, I gotta record. And then I got into some really cool stuff. First off, started Claude coding a whole lot more, vibe coding, as they say. And when I was building the Jon Stewart research report, I realized I want a format that's a little bit easier to reproduce, not so manual. I mean, I showed you kind of pieces of that in the last couple of videos, and I really jumped into the storytelling behind the map. Great. And then my mind caught hold of this idea, like, what if I could produce an app that integrated Claude code or just large language models, but I was using Claude to do help with the transcription and then help kind of pull insights out of the transcription and put all of those into a research report. So picture a web app, you log in, you upload a PDF from FamilySearch that has an old document in it. You click some buttons and it starts taking you through the process, AI assisted but human driven, to like pull the story out of the details of these old records. And that's what I've been trying to do, and I've had some success, but I'm kind of woefully unprepared for the time it takes to like figure out what is in those records beyond just names and places. Like I've taken this big, huge diversion to tell the Jon Stewart story with where he was and build the map and everything. And that's great. And I love doing that. I love telling the story, but I'm kind of two minds about it. I'm trying to get the details, the extracted real details from the sources. Again, more than just names and places, but like what's actually going on. What can you infer without making up facts? And the storytelling piece of it. So the last month, it's been working on this software product, this web application. Very cool. It's been taking all my extra time, so it's like I missed a week of a video. Okay, then I missed another week. All right, and so I got pretty far into that. I knew I needed to get back to the story of the Nielsen Nelson Kith and Kin and keep exposing the stories and the data and the stuff that I'm learning. Along that journey, I come across full text search, which has been around for a little while now on FamilySearch, but I think my records or my ancestors' records are just kind of being added. And so I do a deep dive on William Nelson. William Nelson is the son of John Nelson and Janet Weir. So this is not Jon Stewart that we looked at last time, but it's the original Nielsen Nelson Kith and Kin family. And William is a son that is 21 years old. He's not my direct ancestor. I'm through the brother, but this William has like 4 old records that I found through full text search. So as I'm building my web app, and it's all about taking sources and building insights and stories, I use these 4 records as kind of the baseline. I've read them, I know what's in them. There's an optical character recognition from FamilySearch, but I'm trying to improve that as well. And I just have a great time building this app. I'm not going to show it just yet. I think if I continue to build it, there's more work to do, but there's more story here. So I'm using these 4 sources, and then the calendar is clicking away, and I realize RootsTech is coming up. RootsTech is a big tech conference hosted by FamilySearch here in Salt Lake City. There's online components, there's in-person components. And I decide I'm going to take my vacation, couple of vacation days, and drop the money and go to RootsTech. But I'm also developing this app, and I'm having a great time doing it with AI assisted coding and AI assisted translating and pulling out insights. So I know I want to do some of that during RootsTech, but of course, Claude Code, you're burning tokens on the cheap roll plan, and I don't want to kind of run out of Claude Code time. So on the on the Wednesday night before the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I up my Claude plan to max, and I go for the $100 a month. So it's 20 times what you'd get in the $17 a month. And a bit of an investment plus the investment to go to RootsTech. But I'm just kind of like, this is the thing I want to do for this month, right? On my hobby. So I pay for that. Glad that I did, because I get into RootsTech and now I've got 100 different ideas for my web app. I want to do research logs. And so I start building that as I'm listening to the people and as I'm looking at their handouts, I'm vibe coding research logs into my web app. Then I go to a session by Stephen Little, and he's from the National Genealogical Society, and he is their AI guru there. And he blows my mind. He's got a GitHub repository, basically an online storage for code. But his code is prompts that you can give to ChatGPT or to Codex or to Claude and Claude Code. And he's got one that does that does transcription, but it's also a research report generator essentially. And I've got my 4 William Nelson documents, and I'm like, I gotta try this, and it's all command line. So I'm fiddling around with that, but I kind of learned how to do it. And man, it is producing some gold for me. It's going through a very structured GPS methodology. So not GPS for maps, but the genealogical proof standard. And it's going through those. And I wanted to improve my app with that same standard, but here's this Claude file, a markdown file, a prompt, if you will, that is doing it all for me. And I'm like, wow, this is blowing my mind. But it's still just command line. And I'm thinking, do I integrate this with my app? Can I build a user interface wrapper around Stephen Little's repository? So I do that in half a session later on Saturday. Thought that was pretty cool. And then realized that I'm getting away from the storytelling. I kind of want to do both. So this last month has been about tools and about building apps and about building prompts and using Claude better to assist in my family history research. But I need to get back to telling the story. Then I think it was in the same session, Steven's like, hey, who's using this? Who's using that? And I hear this word NotebookLM. Guess this has been around for a little bit. It's Google's product. It's based on their AI Gemini, but it's kind of like a tour through where you can pick things that are sort of pre-built. The concept works like this: upload some documents. They could be PDFs, text, images, all kinds of files. Upload those, put them in a project, and then do things with them. What can you do? You can click the infographic button and you can edit the prompt a little bit. It doesn't give you kind of full control, but it can drive the main prompt that they have to create infographics. You can create a slide deck. You can create a report. And in fact, you can even use that report and use Stephen Little's research assistant prompt and drop that into the report and go. That's cool too. And then I hit this other one, and this blew my mind. It's an audio overview, and you can have it tell a story, and you can decide whether it's like short, medium, or long, or you can do this version of the audio overview called Deep Dive. And Deep Dive sets it up like a podcast between a man and a woman. These are all AI generated voices. And I know what you're going to say. It's going to sound like slop. Stick with me here. And you can give it a little bit of a prompt. You can't change the voices really. Deep Dive is its own style in NotebookLM, but you can give it some direction for the podcast. Pay attention to this part of the source files. Don't pay attention to that part of the source files. You can do a little bit of additional prompting. Then you click go and come back in 10 minutes, and there's a podcast waiting for you. And it kind of blew my mind. I did it like 3 or 4 times. In fact, I ran out of the free tier. I didn't go for paid. I just kind of waited, let it reset. And I produced some infographics, a slideshow, a report, and then a couple of different podcast versions. I was testing the different kinds of prompts and the different lengths of the podcast and what I included and what I didn't include as sources. And wow, it came up with something. So here's my catch up video this month, and I'm going to try and get back on the every week or maybe every 2 weeks, but certainly I'm not going to wait for another month to produce another video because there's just so much stuff happening in this space. It's so cool, and I've got a lot to share. I'm still going to build the story of Kith and Kin, but I'm going to do it in from the lens of like trying out these other tools and trying out these different ways to do family history. Awesome stuff. So today, what we're going to do is listen to this podcast. I'll give you a couple warnings. Getting back in the car, and I tell my wife, "Hey, I've got a podcast for you to listen to." And she starts navigating on the car screen to go to my podcast. I said, "No, no, no, it's just right here. It's local on my phone." And I press play, and she says, "Is this AI?" And I say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And she turns off the audio right away. I said, "No, no, give it a chance. Give it a chance." Because I know what you're thinking, and I was thinking the same thing. This is just going to be slop. It's going to be that totally fake voice, and it's going to be a really bad script. Like the narration, the story that it's telling is going to be bad. The narration is going to be bad. And granted, there are a couple of places in this audio file where it pronounces a word incorrectly. It kind of over emotes a little bit. There isn't really embellishment. There is a deep dive, and what it's doing is it's trying to make a whole story with just the sources that you've given it. Well, I haven't given it all of the sources to do with William Nelson. I've just given it 4 records about his property that span a few decades. And so it's trying to fill in or make inference from, we don't hear about anything from him from the record for like 13 or 20 years or whatever it is. It's like, well, there's probably other records. So it's not quite at the point where I can like do a series, say, on William Nelson. And as I'm introducing, these 4 records about land deeds, it's trying to, again, make a compact story. So it's not leaving room for like episode 2 or 3 or 4 where we discover more things. I'm not writing 12 episodes and then chunking them up. It's just basically a one shot on, here are your sources and here's your episode. So I would like these podcasting tools to get a little bit better, put all the resources, put all the sources in and give me 12 episodes and scripts for 12 episodes, and then help me produce each one of them. Click the button to produce each one. We are not there yet, but this is kind of fun because we're somewhere. There's parts of this story that I would not have really figured out in the context of the time and the location and what the land was like and what all the laws were around land deeds. Uh, it figured those out, and it's telling me in the story. Now, all of the same caveats apply, right? I really should go back and make sure that everything it says is completely 100% accurate. And I can. That will take, of course, those months of research to kind of deep dive into the context of the time and the place. Okay, fine. But I'm demonstrating a tool that is really changing the way I approach telling the story of family history. Will I do this for everyone? I don't know. I'll probably try more, sure. I tried the video one. It was a little bit, it wasn't as good, I think, as the podcast. So we're going to listen to that today together. And I might stop a little bit and identify some of the slop, like mispronounced words, or areas where it's making a jump in the timeline. And so it's saying, wow, we haven't heard from him in years. And then he comes back, and it's doing that as the storytelling. Okay, those things aren't great. So I might interrupt on some of those things, but we're going to listen to them together. And as we're listening, I'm actually doing a double duty. I've got this stack of the Fraser Moffett and Mary Nelson scrapbook from 1933, and I completed a redigitization of that whole stack. and I got to put it back into the protective sheets so that I can put it away in its binder. So we're going to do two things. We're going to listen together to the William Nelson podcast story created by AI out of these sources from FamilySearch. And you're going to watch me put these things back into their jackets. And that's going to be today's video. So let's get started. Okay, I've got the audio queued up. I'm just going to clean up my space here a little bit. Put on a protective glove. In fact, I'll get two of them. Here we go.
Welcome to the deep dive. We have a fascinating stack of sources in front of us today.
We really do.
Yeah, and our mission here is to examine a very specific collection of 19th century land records. These are originating from Otonabee Township, Ontario, Canada.
Right.
And we are going to take these administrative
Pronunciation was
documents,
good.
Faded receipts, formal land tickets, official government correspondence, and use them to reconstruct the life of a single Scottish settler named William Nelson.
Yeah, it's incredible what you can find in there.
Absolutely. We are treating this entirely as a detective story. We're piecing together a timeline from the bureaucratic paper trail he left behind.
And that paper trail is remarkably revealing. When you look at government records from this era, they initially present as purely transactional, right?
Right, just stamps and jargon.
Exactly. There are stamps, signatures, very formal language. But reading the subtext of these specific documents exposes a decades-long narrative. I mean, it maps out a gritty timeline of resilience, severe geographical challenges, and really the harsh realities embedded in the pioneer experience.
Yeah, to set the stakes before we open the first file, I want you to put yourself in this specific situation. Imagine packing up everything you own, crossing the Atlantic Ocean, and walking into an unfamiliar, heavily forested landscape.
Just endless trees.
Endless. And you are staking your entire future on a single sheet of paper handed to you by a district land board.
Wow.
There's no backup plan. Your survival and your legal standing depend entirely on the conditions printed on that paper.
It places an immense amount of pressure on an individual. And that pressure is really the defining characteristic of the very first document we have in this stack.
Okay, let's unpack this. The first piece of evidence is a location ticket issued by the land board for the District of Newcastle.
Right.
The date at the bottom is May 31st, 1820.
1820, yeah.
So this single sheet establishes our baseline for William Nelson. The ticket records that he was born in Scotland and is currently 21 years old.
Barely an adult, really.
Yeah, just 21. It notes he has been in the province for about 18 months. He has successfully petitioned the board to become a settler, and he has officially taken the oath of allegiance.
And the document also explicitly states the board has examined his character, and they are satisfied with the propriety of admitting him.
So he passed the vibe check.
Basically, yeah. They're essentially vouching for him as a reliable investment for the government's settlement strategy.
And his reward for passing that character check is the assignment of 100 acres of land.
A huge chunk of land.
Yeah, the geography is highly specific here. He is granted the east half of lot number 18 in the 4th concession of the township of Otonabee.
Right.
At 21 years old, being handed 100...
I'm super impressed that they pronounce Otonabee the right way. There was one version of it, and I think in the long version it was said once in a weird way. But in this one, they pronounce it Otonabee the correct way, like every time. So that's cool.
100 acres sounds like a massive victory, but, and this is a big, but the fine print of the ticket completely changes the tone of the arrangement.
What's fascinating here is the sheer physical and legal burden this location ticket places on him. The land is not a gift.
Not at all.
It is heavily conditional. The grant is subject to strict settling duties, and the government mandates that the entirety of these duties must be performed within 18 months of the ticket's date.
Which is wild, because the actual list of duties is staggering.
Oh, it really is.
Within those 18 months, William is legally required to clear and fence 5 acres of untamed wilderness.
By hand.
By hand. He has to clear half of the road in front of his lot and half the road at the rear. On top of that, he must build a dwelling house, and the government dictates the exact dimensions. It must measure 16 feet by 20 feet, quote, in the clear.
And that phrase, in the clear, is a vital architectural distinction in these records.
What does that actually mean for him?
It means the interior usable living space must be 16 by 20 feet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, So consequently, the
Oh,
actual
wow.
exterior footprint of the log structure he's required to build must be significantly larger because you have to account for the thickness of the timber walls.
That makes sense.
He has to chop down the trees, hew the logs, notch them, and assemble this structure entirely by hand.
I want to focus on the timeline for a second because, I mean, we know how frustrating it is just to assemble modern flat pack furniture with a diagram and an Allen wrench, right?
Oh yeah, it's a nightmare.
William Nelson is instructed to walk into a virgin forest, fell enough timber for a substantial cabin, manually pull the stumps from 5 acres of land.
Stumps are the worst part.
Yeah, construct miles of fencing and clear a roadway. He has 18 months to do this alone, and as a final hurdle, the ticket dictates that once he proves he completed all this manual labor, he owes a patent fee of £12.
The financial burden compounds the physical one here. 12 pounds was a substantial sum of money for a young immigrant in 1820.
Massive.
And the legal threat loomed.
They kind of mention that he's doing it alone, and so this is where the sources that I upload to produce the podcast don't have the surrounding story, which is he wasn't alone. He was one of several sons of John and Janet who also received location tickets and land, and as did John and Janet. So they probably helped each other, which may have contributed to how long it took to do everything. We'll hear that shortly. But the AI that built the podcast didn't have all of that other context about the family. So again, it's making some assumptions. He was alone, but probably wasn't. The family was around and they had settled in different lots around the same place.
Over all of this is total forfeiture. If he fails to meet these specific metrics within the 18-month window, he holds no legal title.
He's zero.
The land board retains the right to revoke the location ticket and assign the 100 acres to another petitioner.
Which makes the second document in our stack incredibly compelling. It is a small receipt dated October 14th, 1823.
Oh, that's
That is more than 3 years after the location ticket was issued.
right.
The receipt confirms that William Nelson paid £4 as the, quote, first installment of his patent fee. The funds were received by an M.F. Whitehead, acting on behalf of a James Macaulay.
This receipt indicates that by late 1823, he is still physically on the property. And he's actively trying to secure his legal standing by chipping away at that 12-pound fee.
Paying in chunks.
Yeah, paying in installments suggests he doesn't have the liquid capital to clear the debt all at once, which totally aligns with the financial strain of pioneer farming. However, the most critical piece of evidence regarding his timeline isn't the receipt itself.
No, it's not.
It is a later addition to the original 1820 document.
Right. I am looking at the left margin of the 1820 location ticket right now. There is handwriting scribbled sideways across the paper, clearly added long after the original ink dried.
This raises an important question. When did the government actually acknowledge that Nelson finished?
That little bit about, and I hope I can show you in the video, about on the side of the location ticket written years later, that was a full transcription that Claude found. And I saw it and I read it, but I didn't put two and two together that the location ticket was for 1 year and the annotation was years later on the same deed, as it were, the same location ticket, and it was written on the side. So that was like the same document as the record from start to addition years later. And I didn't make that computation, probably because I'm not a formal professional genealogist, but now I know to look for those things. And a bunch of the classes that I took at RootsTech tell me to look for those things too. The AI found it and made sense of it. That's cool.
His settling duties.
Because the original contract demanded completion in 18 months.
Exactly, which set a deadline of late November 1821. But that margin note is the official certification. It states, settlement duty performed and certified by the Land Board of the Newcastle District, and the date of that certification is February 4th, 1829.
The math there is just jarring. He received the ticket in May 1820. The deadline was late 1821. He does not receive official certification until February 1829.
Yeah.
We are looking at a gap of nearly 9 years. How does a settler avoid eviction for nearly a decade when the legal contract explicitly demands 18 months? Did the landlord simply ignore their own deadlines?
It reveals a massive disconnect between administrative expectations in an office and the topographical reality on the ground.
Right.
The government could print an 18-month deadline on a ticket all they wanted, but they couldn't force a single man to fell a forest any faster than humanly possible.
Physics is physics.
Yeah. The 9-year delay demonstrates that the land board likely had to exercise immense leniency. Evicting him wouldn't clear the land faster, it would just restart the clock with a new, equally overwhelmed settler.
That makes total sense.
And this margin note shatters the romanticized pioneer myth of rapid, triumphant progress. It took Nelson from the age of 21 to the age of 30 just to clear 5 acres, build a single cabin, and secure a certification.
You picture him out there for 9 years, swinging an axe through Canadian winters, paying installment fees just to get that signature in the margin.
The decade of his youth.
Yeah. And in February 1829, he finally gets it. The land is certified. The immediate assumption you make is that he has finally secured his future right.
That's what you think. But the chronological placement of the next document proves otherwise. Just months.
Okay, we're hanging off right here. And I just cut him off. He's going to say, just months after. This is part of the analysis of a document that can really be fast forwarded with the use of AI. I've got 4 different documents, and they all say land records, and they're all teaching me things. If I were a professional genealogist, I would probably extract everything that this podcast did for me, the NotebookLM AI and Gemini. Uh, but I'm not a professional genealogist. And I wish I could be and spend all my time doing that, but it's not realistic. So I need some helpers, and this thing helped me get there. It made the connection between the date and time of one document and not the date and time, but the date and season of one document and the date and season of another document, and what had changed in the land arrangement. So listen into this next section.
After finally securing that certification, his entire trajectory fractures.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The third piece of evidence is a formal letter dated July 9, 1829. This is barely 5 months after the land board certified his 9 years of labor.
Barely any time at all.
And the letter is not written by William Nelson himself. It is authored by a man named Thomas Carr, who is writing to the District of Newcastle on Nelson's behalf.
The involvement of Thomas Carr suggests a couple of things. Nelson either lacked the literacy to draft a formal government petition himself, or he understood that navigating the bureaucracy required the influence of someone more established.
Probably.
Like having a lawyer advocate for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Carr's letter functions as both a grievance and a subtle pivot in strategy. Carr states that Nelson, the occupant of the east half of Lot 18, wishes to purchase a neighboring 50 acres, specifically the northeast quarter of Lot 17.
The justification Carr provides in the letter is devastating. I'm reading directly from the source here. Carr writes, "The reason of his wishing to purchase the 50 acres in question is that a considerable part of his own 100 is not good. A good deal of the 50 acres is, he says, also occupied by a pine ridge and a swamp."
It forces a complete reevaluation of the previous 9 years.
Absolutely.
He didn't just spend his 20s clearing a normal forest. He spent his 20s trying to drain a swamp and fighting a pine ridge.
Oh, that's brutal.
He paid installments, built his 16 by 20 cabin, and pushed through nearly a decade of administrative delays, only to officially acknowledge that the land he just earned title to is fundamentally unworkable for agriculture.
He secures the legal rights to a swamp.
Yeah.
And the letter also introduces a sharp contrast in how different settlers reacted to this system. Carr notes that the 50-acre plot Nelson wants to buy, the one that actually contains some, quote, good land on the west side, was originally located by another man named James Grindle.
Right, Grendel.
And Carr explicitly mentions that Grindle, quote, has since left the country without having done any settlement duties.
That detail perfectly illustrates the geographical lottery of the concession system. The land board divided the map into squares without detailed knowledge of the topography.
They were just drawing lines on a piece of paper.
Exactly. William Nelson drew Lot 18, which happened to be a swamp. James Grindle drew the adjacent lot, took one look at the terrain, and immediately chose to cut his losses and abandon the country entirely.
Just packed up and left.
Well, that's not really fair to James Grindle. We haven't really done the research on what impacted his decision to leave his location and abandon the property. So again, absent some of the sources about what Grindle did and was doing and thinking, it made some inference that he just kind of up and left and abandoned it. Well, that's not really fair to James. So maybe that little bit was a little bit of AI slop, but generally speaking, this is actually a pretty good story.
Grindle recognized the futility before lifting an axe. Nelson, conversely, exhibits an almost irrational stubbornness. After 9 years of sunk costs, instead of following Grindle's lead, he petitions to buy the neighbor's abandoned lot just to access a functional strip of soil.
The psychological difference between Grindle and Nelson is stark. Grindle walks away from the blank page. Nelson spends a decade writing on it, realizes it's the wrong paper, and asks for a new sheet.
That's a great way to put it.
But that brings us to the final document in our stack. There is a massive chronological gap in the records here, jumping forward 15 years to September 20, 1844.
By 1844, William Nelson is approximately 45 years old.
So he's been at this a long time.
A very long time. The contents of this document, an official in-council government order, reveal that the 1829 attempt to pivot away from the swamp was merely the beginning of an entirely new bureaucratic ordeal.
Yeah, the 1844 order indicates a complete geographical shift. Nelson is no longer associated with his original Lot 18. He is also not located on the adjacent Lot 17 that Thomas Carr inquired about.
Right.
Instead, the document places him on the west half of Lot number 20 in the 5th concession of Otonabee. The text notes he has been residing on this new lot and continuously improving it since 1830.
This means that roughly a year after the 1829 letter regarding the swamp, he abandoned the original 100 acres entirely.
Just walked away from the cabin and everything.
He moved to Lot 20 and began the grueling process of felling trees, clearing stumps, and building a homestead all over again from scratch.
Wow.
But the 1844 document shows that 14 years into this second attempt, he still does not possess clear legal title to the land he is standing on.
The core purpose of this 1844 in-council order is to address a petition Nelson submitted. He is formally asking the government for permission to purchase this west half of Lot 20, and the terminology used in the order is critical. It states he is petitioning to purchase the land, quote, on the same terms as other indigent settlers.
The classification of indigent carries heavy implications.
It really does.
It legally designates a person as impoverished, lacking fundamental financial resources. William Nelson has been in the province for 24 years. He has cleared land on 2 different lots, built multiple structures, and paid patent fee installments.
Yeah.
Yet at 45 years old, his official standing in the government registry is that of an indigent man relying on a special petition just to secure the right to buy his farm.
And the order also exposes the bureaucratic, tangled web he had to navigate to get this approval. The council doesn't just grant him the land, they have to actively clear the ledger.
Right.
The document states that the original locations for this specific half lot had been granted to 2 other men. Francis Lomeau, which actually appears to be spelled S-O-M-E-A-N, Somean in the script, and Matthew Pearson.
Yeah, I think this actually, the name, the extra name here might be Como. I've looked at it a couple times. It is kind of hard to read whether it's an S, an L, or a C. I think it's Como. Again, if I had a chance to kind of inject that specific detail, if I'd realized that beforehand, the AI podcast script and therefore audio could have gotten that right. So that might be something that I do in the future, right? If there's misunderstanding about a name that's in the source, or we think the translation might be bad, I could give it the actual name and say, when you come across this name, this is actually what it is. So I'm learning a little bit about what to prompt the AI as well.
To resolve Nelson's petition, the government legally cancels the claims of both Lomeau and Pearson.
It highlights the chaotic nature of 19th century land management. Lomeau and Pearson were likely similar to James Grindle, men who were assigned the lot on paper but either never arrived or abandoned it shortly after.
Just ghost names on a ledger.
Exactly. Yet their names remain on the official ledger for over a decade, blocking Nelson from securing his title. The council finally erasing their claims allows Nelson's petition to be granted as prayed, officially recognizing his right to the property after 14 years of occupation.
So what does this all mean? We track a timeline starting in 1820 with the 21-year-old taking an oath and accepting a strict 18-month contract. We follow him through a 9-year delay, a realization that his land is a swamp, an immediate relocation, and another 14 years of labor. The timeline ends in 1844 with a 45-year-old man needing an indigent classification to finalize his claim against ghost names on a ledger.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this stack of sources provides a rigorous counter-narrative to traditional pioneer history.
It definitely does.
It proves that sheer physical labor did not guarantee stability. A settler could adhere to the system, submitting to the character checks, paying the installments, fulfilling the exact dimensions of the settling duties, and still be defeated by a pine ridge.
Or a swamp.
Or a swamp, yeah. It underscores how deeply vulnerable these individuals were to both geographical bad luck and systemic administrative delays. Nelson's survival required an incredible capacity to absorb failure and start over.
It changes how you interact with a physical archive. I mean, a location ticket is not just an assignment of acreage. It is a legally binding anchor. A tiny date scribbled in a margin represents 9 years of isolated manual labor. A formal request for 50 adjacent acres is a desperate attempt to salvage a decade of wasted effort. These pieces of paper are the architectural blueprints of one man's prolonged struggle against both the wilderness and the state.
And the value of this kind of historical analysis lies in recognizing the human friction generating the paperwork. Administrative records are designed to flatten human experience into data points. Dates, acreages, fees.
Just facts and figures.
Exactly. Reconstructing a narrative like Nelson's requires reading the silence between the documents, looking past the surface facts to see the human struggle underneath, like that 9-year delay on an 18-month deadline, or the desperate pivot away from that pine ridge.
I want to leave you with a final thought regarding your own administrative footprint. We just spent this deep dive reconstructing the absolute highest and lowest points of William Nelson's adult life without reading a single diary entry.
Not one.
We did it entirely through his interactions with bureaucracy. So if historians 200 years from now were to reconstruct your life using nothing but your paper trail, your lease agreements, your tax returns, your parking tickets, your bank statements, and your digital receipts, what kind of story would those documents tell about your struggles, your sudden pivots, and your own resilience? Keep digging, and we will catch you on the next deep dive. Welcome to the deep dive. We have a fascinating stack of sources. And
Okay, it was autoplaying. Weirdly, too, right at the end of that clip, it got like really quiet, and I can't explain why. And because I'm kind of just doing this live, I didn't adjust the volume there. So that was NotebookLM with 4 sources that I got from a FamilySearch full text search for William Nelson's land records in Otonabee Township. Put in and created the podcast in 10 minutes, which is awesome. Now, the reality is that I've only completed about half of this stack to get them back into their jackets. And I don't have an AI robot to do this physical work. So you might think, well, Stuart, you cheated a little bit on this month's video. You left us hanging for 4 weeks. And then your video is basically an audio of a podcast that AI created in 10 minutes. So bonus feature, we're going to stick around and go into fast forward mode. And I'm going to put the rest of these in until it's complete so that you know I'm not cheating. There is always work to do. There's always physical work to do, whether you're double checking what the AI has given you so that it's not slop, or whether it's physical work like putting heirlooms back into their protective jackets to store for posterity. So, see you on the other side, and then we'll get to the end of the video. Okay. I don't really want to do that again. I've actually done that one, two, three times. Well, put them in originally, took them all out, did some scans. Didn't go very well. I think I was on a flatbed scanner and thought, I'm not going to do all of them this way because it was just taking so long. Didn't have all of them out, put some of them back in. Took them all out again when I hooked up this DSLR setup. Not great settings on exposure and focus, and put them all back in, not realizing bad exposure. And then took them all back out again, better exposure, better focus. Now just put them all back in. Sometimes that's family history, folks. Thanks for watching.